The years that followed had been a long and agonizing time when everything in my life seemed to fall apart. My husband, Ethan, found me in Michael's arms after 5 years had passed since I had finally met my ex-husband, whom I had once thought of as my soulmate. The betrayal was so great that it destroyed not only him, but also the life we had built together over the previous 10 years. I could still picture Ethan standing there, stunned and silent, his hands shaking as he held the takeout bag he had, brought for me. Ethan refused to talk to me, and I couldn't blame him. I signed the papers in tears, knowing that I had no right to fight for anything, our home, our memories, or him. When he saw Michael and me in such a precarious situation, his eyes lost their spark. Instead of yelling or becoming angry, he simply stared at me as if I were a stranger before turning and leaving town. Bear the weight of my mistakes or the judgment of our mutual friends, for the next few years I worked on rebuilding my life. Therapy became my sanctuary, where I could examine the cracks in my marriage and confront the deeper parts of myself that had led to my infidelity. It wasn't just the cheating that I had to grapple with. It was the loneliness, the fear of not being enough, and the desperate craving for validation that I sought from Michael. I had destroyed the most meaningful part of my life, and no amount of self-reflection could undo the damage. The guilt gnawed at me daily, but what hurt the most wasn't the affair itself. It was the realization of how deeply Ethan had loved me in a way I had never fully appreciated. He had been patient, kind, and supportive. He had been my rock, the one person I could rely on for everything, yet I had betrayed him. I turned my back on everything we had worked for and built together. Michael had been nothing more than a fleeting escape, a momentary distraction in a life that felt hollow. But in the end, that brief relief cost me the love of my life. When I received the wedding invitation, I almost didn't open it. It was from Sarah, one of Ethan's closest friends, who had always been kind to me. Her name brought back memories, dinners, trips, and laughter that seemed to have happened ages ago. I hesitated to open the envelope, but when I saw the wedding location, my stomach fell. The ceremony would be conducted at the same church where Ethan and I had exchanged vows. I was on the verge of tearing up the invitation and throwing it away, but something inside of me, a need for closure, compelled me to go. I had never given Ethan a real apology or had the opportunity to say goodbye. Now was my chance. With the same stained glass windows, the same gentle candlelight, and the subtle aroma of old wood and roses in every nook and cranny, the church appeared nearly identical to how it had on our wedding day. On the day of the wedding, I decided to go, since the place seemed to reverberate with memories of Ethan. I anxiously looked across the crowd, alternating between fear and hope that he would be there. And then I saw him. I felt like a ghost, wandering through the hallways of my past. Ethan, who was seated toward the front, appeared at ease. I tried to blend in with a pew without him noticing, but my movement caught his attention. Our eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. Dapper, wearing a dark suit, his hair had more gray in it now, but his posture was still assured. He was speaking to a woman with bright red hair, who laughed at something he said, her hand lightly brushing against his arm. A knot of regret and jealousy formed in my chest. Was she the one who had replaced me in his heart? Did she bring him happiness in a way I never could? I lowered my head and focused on the ceremony, silently struggling with the weight of my emotions. When the vows were exchanged and the reception began, I lingered near the exit, debating whether to leave before the emotions became too overwhelming. But fate had other plans. The woman by his side was stunning, elegant, poised, and everything. I felt I wasn't at that moment. His face was unreadable, one of quiet recognition rather than anger or warmth. I wanted to say I was sorry, but I couldn't, because I didn't deserve his pardon after what I had done. His voice called gently behind me. I turned to face Ethan, who was only a few paces away and who looked precisely like the man I had once loved. My heart was pounding, and the ache in my chest was nearly intolerable. Up close, Ethan was even, more impressive than I had remembered. There was a calmness and an air of maturity about him that I envied. He wasn't the same man I had left behind. Rather, he had strength and quiet resilience. He had endured and moved on, while I had been mired in regret. I was able to speak, my voice trembling with the emotions inside of me. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea to attend. I told him honestly, and he nodded slightly. His tone was kind but detached, as if we were strangers rather than two people who had formerly shared years of love and trust. In a calm but unreadable voice, he inquired, "Are you okay?" I answered, swallowing hard and trying to keep my cool. "Empty." The apology I was unable to adequately express. "I'm trying to make sense of everything, and therapy helps," I said coolly. "I'm relieved." "I'm so sorry, Ethan," I cried as I muttered. "I didn't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know how deeply sorry I am for ruining the best thing I've ever had. I was selfish and caused us to fall apart." After staring at me for a while, Ethan's expression softened a little. "Clara, I'm not sure whether I'll ever forgive you." His gaze strayed to the woman with the red hair, who was now talking animatedly close to the dance floor. "But I've made peace with what happened. I had to. It took time. A lot of time. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt like hell, but it's in the past now. I've moved on." I felt a glimmer of envy, but I ignored it because I had no right to feel that way. "I still loved you," I muttered, "but I knew that for a split second, I wasn't the person you deserved." Ethan's gaze softened, and I caught a glimpse of the man I knew before, but it was gone as fast as it came, replaced by something unfamiliar. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Clara," he said in a steady, calm voice. "You deserve that, but it won't be with me." He was correct. I had lost him, and no amount of regret could ever make it right. I nodded, tears welling in my eyes.